Hello everyone and welcome to the next edition of the sales webinar series here at the Center for Professional Selling at Ball State University. My name is Deva Rangarajan and I'm the host. Today we have a returning guest all the way from the beautiful island of Mauritius in Africa. So Youvraj, thank you again for taking the time to talk to us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Deva. It is a real pleasure to be back and to be talking to the audience. I'm quite excited. And my country looks very beautiful during these days because the days are returning to be a bit longer and the sky is very blue. So you have very beautiful pictures if you are a picture taker. So.
Indeed. I can imagine the fact is that, okay, it's because you're in the other half of the hemisphere. So essentially it's getting to be summer for you guys, whereas we are now moving closer and closer towards winter on our side here. So
indeed, it is summer and we have very beautiful seaside and beaches right now.
Indeed. So Youvraj, actually, to make sure that people get there, of course, they have to take a flight and come out there. And of course, people are looking for a lot of deals and coming out there and trying to take a look at it. And the last class, we talked about how do you try to make sense of what customers are looking at, taking a look at big data, access to information, and what are the preferences of people. We talked a little bit about that, right? We talked about big data and how organizations are using it, especially in your country, which relies a lot as well on tourism, and how understanding the behavior patterns of your customers is going to be critical for you to entice them to come in, and big data plays a big role there. Now, I want to build on that because one of the things you talked about is it's great that you have big data, you take a look at it, you're going to collect a lot of sources of information, you're going to gather that information, but the question is that information means nothing if you do not draw insights from it. And one of the topics which you and I have discussed in the past, which I really thought would be interesting here, is this idea of an insights-driven organization. So tell me a little bit more about what did you mean when you talked about this idea of an insights-driven organization?
Yeah, thank you, Deva. Indeed, you rightly mentioned the value of data is only realized once action is taken on this data. So insight-driven organization is an organization that brings data, analytic insight, and reasoning into every decision made within the organization at all levels. It is very important to mention that it should be at all levels, from the C-suite, including the CEO, up through the operational or managerial level, up to down to the operational level at each and every employee level. This means getting the right information in the right format to the right person and specifically at the right time.
Yeah.
And I believe that there are few insight-driven organizations in the world today. Some studies show that only 8% of organizations are really tapping on that, and they can boast that they are insight-driven organization.
Now, so let's have an example that if I were to try and take a look at it from the common names that people might know about, right? Can you think of some firms that, in your opinion, are insight-driven, that 8% that you talk about? Can you, in your opinion, what are some of those companies which are very well into insights-driven businesses?
Oh yeah, sure. So some companies that come to our mind very quickly, that would be Google itself. Then you have Apple, then you have Facebook, then you have Booking.com, or you have Airbnb. And in terms of for airlines, we can talk about companies like KLM or Alaska Airlines. Then we can say that companies which are very innovative and using data are Tesla. Or in the publication and digital publication field, that would be Washington Post. They have a different DNA indeed, And these companies, or we can say that they are really customer obsessed. And this is driven by the insight that they
Okay.
derive from the data that they have, they collect, and on which they act.
It's very interesting you talk about all this because a lot of the companies you talk about are very tech focused organizations, not necessarily Washington Post, but the organizations that have been influenced by how their own customers and consumers, if you may, are adopting technology and using it as well. And I think, what are your thoughts on why is it that the examples that we give are predominantly in what we would call the B2C space? And what is preventing some of the more mature organizations that not many people will hear, the B2B organizations? What makes them not do this? I like this idea of customer obsessed, right? So immediately when you say customer obsessed, I'm thinking to myself of the companies that I happen to work with, which are much more product and engineering obsessed, saying that they want to have their products and they talk a lot about their own products, but not necessarily customer obsessed. So what I'm actually trying to say is that what kind of competencies are needed in organizations to become truly insights driven? Because I think the answer to that is what is going to help me understand why some companies are much more insights driven, others are struggling to do that.
Yeah, I think to for companies to become an insight-driven organization, it is essential to address five building blocks, and these are the strategy, the people, the process, the data, and technology. And most of the companies which fail to become a true data or insight-driven organization, they focus a lot on technology,
Yeah.
or they focus a lot on strategy, and maybe the people and the process part is left behind. By strategy, what I means is having an analytics vision, and
Yeah.
that vision must be aligned with business vision, which is very, very important. And then you need to define and you need to uncover what are your value drivers and business case where you're going to apply this data driven. It could be in terms of priority. Then you have also the part where you need to manage your stakeholders, internal and external, where you need to communicate and you need to convince and you need to make them understand the why of this strategy. It should be like a shared vision.
Yeah.
Then you need to have the operating model, the right operating model that fits for your organization and which is going to help you become that insight driven. And then you need to have innovation to bring that. So the other competency would be the people. I would say the most important after a clear aligned strategy, that would be people. To start with, you need to have the CEO himself or a C-suite people who would be championing this cause, this truly data-driven idea. Then you need to have the right organization design to make this happen. Then you need to have the right talent. If you don't have it, you need to make an assessment
Yeah.
of where your peoples are in the journey of learning or data literacy journey of learning. Then if you uncover this, then you can then decide on what type of training or learning rather you need to bring to so as to level up the talent and the skill set of people that you will need. And you should be, this assessment is also going to help you bring other people from outside, like data scientists, and combined with the data scientists that you bring from outside, they're going to work with a citizen data scientist that you have, that is a purple people that you have inside the organization. Then you need to have a clear change journey and decision process there. And of course, all this, you need to start building the knowledge management that
Yeah.
is going to continue harness the people. Then you have the technology itself, but let's come to the process before technology. So the process would be, you need to know which project or which functional area you're going to give priority in this data driven or insight driven journey. Then you need to value all the ideas and then prioritize from there. Then you need to build on the agility and the scalability, or means it should be scalable, I'm sorry. And you need to be agile, because you need to adapt very quickly to the reality of the market or the reality of the environment in which you're functioning. Then you need to also consider some processes that needs to be deeply re-engineered, because now you have the insight to do that. And some processes you may go for an automation, because it is possible to go for automation for that. Then you need to have the right governance. You remember we talk about the governance of data. So the governance is going to it is going to set a framework for this. Then you need to have ambitious benefits that you want to realize. Afterwards, this is going to help you measure whether you have been successful in this type of implementation. Then the data itself, that is fourth, uh, the fourth component would be the data. That is the information model and the data sources. The data quality is very important, and the way that you're going to manage that. Then the ethics and sharing of this data within the organization, and the famous regulation and compliance that we discussed. You remember the data protection, the California Consumer Protection Act, or the GDPR,
Right.
an equivalent of country law. And then the concept of third-party data that you're going to bring, that is a social media or other form of data. Then the technology part itself. The technology part is the least complex, I would say. It is least complex because you have a lot of technologies today,
Yeah.
like customer data platforms, CRM, data management platforms. And then if you infuse artificial intelligence and machine learning to that, and then you have, it is going to create wonders for you. And then you have cloud, uh, which is the cloud technology which is there, and which is more and more being privileged compared to premises.
Yeah.
But all this needs to be intelligently secured, reliable, so that you have high level of business continuity. So to sum up, you need components, 5 components: strategy, people, process, data, and technology,
Yeah.
all blended together smartly and orchestrated in the right way. It is going to take you to the journey, and with time, you're going to become a truly insight-driven organization.
I, I absolutely, this is fantastic, because one of the things that I took away while you were saying all this was one of my favorite articles was an article that I read almost 20 years ago, 18 years ago, was an article called Avoid the Four Perils of CRM. And essentially at that point in time, it is written by in a Harvard Business Review article, which talks about how CRM initiatives failed because of an over reliance on technology rather than on the strategy and the change management process. And of course, the moment you start talking about change management, there are going to be people, if you talk about organization. So a lot of the things that you talk about comes back to that. Of course, of since 20 years ago, what has changed a lot, of course, is technology's evolved considerably, and so has data, quality of data, and what we can do with it. But I think it's very interesting that some things change, but other things do not. And I love what you said. These are the 5 things. And and I think, in my opinion, where going back to my earlier question, where I think a lot of traditional business to business organizations, as against the companies that you gave as examples of Facebook, Google, Amazon, Washington Post, is the fact is that they still are obsessed with their technologies rather than obsessed with the customers. Consequently, the insights that they draw are not mainly geared towards what the customers truly want. They have intentions, of course, but the strategy is not there. It's that level of that, which means that the insights that they draw is still relevant to their technology, not how that technology is going to help the customers. And I think fundamentally that is one of the things that we see companies struggle with. And once, of course, they do it, there is an over reliance on technology to collect the data rather than understanding that the people in the process actually go hand in hand, because it's the people in the process in a business to business context. It's the people who have to go talk to customers and share that information in a way in the technology which has an impact on the process of the sales or the service itself, which is undergoing change because of what the management is asking them to do, and not understanding how these moving parts fit together is going to lead to a lot of mistakes being made. And I think that can explain why some of the companies you talk about, the what I call born in the cloud companies, are more successful. But I think you can learn a lot from traditional companies like the Washington Post, which have had to evolve along with changing needs and priorities of their customers. And that for me is what I think is very, very interesting for your insight. Now, no, Youvraj, I think what you said is great, right? So you said the 5 things, right? You talked about strategy, people, process, technology, data. You talked about all these 5. The question is that making this change is going to be expensive, and it can be horribly expensive depending upon whether you have to come back from the Stone Age into this age, or you've made significant progress where the change is not going to be that drastic. My point is that what are the competitive advantage you're going to gain by being insights driven? Essentially what I'm saying is that, is it going to be that much more to justify this change? Because change does not happen overnight and people don't like change. So talk us through about why organizations should do this, why, and what are the competitive advantages that they're going to get by being insights driven?
In fact, I'm going to take it from the sales and marketing perspective, and then I'm going to bring it to other areas of bottom line benefits that we can derive. In fact, what all the companies that we mentioned and the other companies that we didn't mention, and we say that they have the challenge of bringing the data or insight driven or becoming insight driven. What we see today, the challenge is we have empowered consumer today in front of us. The empowered consumer is more connected. He's more or she's more informed than ever. And they demand that retailers or brand understand their ever-changing shopping habits or respond with tailored and relevant information. What they want is they want the right product available to them and want them available at the most optimum time and place. So the modern consumer or the modern customer has little to zero tolerance today. They want what they want, and they want it almost immediately. They want delivery to be very quick. They want a seamless experience across channels and devices. So how we are going to now tackle these customers and keep them with us and make them loyal to us. So we need to have a customer first approach. That is, we need to put the customer in everything that we do. This is very important. Then the bottom line benefit for sales and marketing would be, while you gather the insight from your customer behavior, the buying patterns, the historical data that you collected, combining with the social media behavior of this profile and the analytics and infusing AI and machine learning to them, what you can do is you can increase the sales. How? Now you are actually improving the customer experience. Yeah. You are segmenting. You are creating micro segments. Yeah. And while creating micro segments, you are personalizing the message that you want to communicate with them. You can bring the content that Deva needs or the content that Youvraj needs according to his profile and behavior. What you're trying to do is you're trying to meet the micro moments that Google mentions of this customer at that time. So overall, you're improving the customer experience by proposing something which is personalized and with the right content on email, website, product offering, and meeting that micro moments needs that we mentioned. You can even predict the next best action of this customer. So what we have done through data that we are trying to build micro segment so as to better target that customer with best offer, with personalized offer, with personalized content. And you can, for salespeople, I know that you are a professor of sales and promoting sales a lot. We are going to talk about sales one of these days. So we can win more customers with predictive segmentation. You can build, if you infuse AI and machine learning to the data that you already have, you can build predictive models which can help you in terms of scoring and segments. And this can have real impact on your actual sales. So what you're doing exactly, you are making a real difference now to your bottom line, because you're targeting better sales opportunities. You're leveraging on all the technologies that we mentioned, website, recommendation engine, personalization engine based on the insight, the customer data platform, the CRM that you have, the website behavior that people are there when browsing. So all this, when you collect and you blend them together intelligently, you can orchestrate better campaigns now in terms of marketing. You can optimize your budget now in terms of what your means. You can reach better click rates, you can reach better return on investment. So this is a real advantage and benefits that you're achieving. Why now you can achieve that? Because in the essence, you're leveraging on the data and the insight that you're deriving, and you're actioning on this insight to better sell, to better inform at all levels that we mentioned, that is the C-suite, the managerial, and your salespeople. So if they have the right data and insight handy, they can take better decision.
Indeed. I love it, because I just want to build on what you just said, because when you do this, when you go to the level of micro segmentation, I think there's one more thing you can also do, is that you can set the right kind of expectations to your customers, which also has an indirect impact on your profitability, because usually we say happy customers make happy employees. So that when you have happier employees who feel that they're proud to be part of an organization which is delivering on its promises, so consequently they feel proud and they actually go the extra mile. Now, essentially what I translate to in an organization like that is that you attract better quality employees coming in, just because you are, of course, you don't want to be creepy, right? You don't want to be that kind of organization that wants to stealthily look into what their customers are doing. But I'm talking about ethical aspects. Goes back to your governance policies and ethics and stuff like that. But I can easily see how you can also attract the right kind of employees, which still, with all the technology, you still need that service to be delivered. And I think that ability to do that and attract the right kind of employees is also going to add to your bottom line, because at the end of the day, if I'm a purely service organization, it's your employees that can make or break your value promise. So I think that is something that we talked about, all the different aspects. We talked about sales, but for me, I think it's also the service organization which is going to benefit from this, from these insights, which is going to give you long-term benefits as well. Huh?
Yeah, sure. Very true. It means we already mentioned one of the components, that is a people component. And you're right. And while companies or brands are designing this strategy of analytics or insight driven, they don't have all the skill set that actually internally. So they need to bring people from outside. And one way you truly and rightly mentioned is that if you are an ambitious company
Yeah.
and you have very clear strategy and vision, and you can communicate very clearly this to potential employees, that is potential data scientists or the purple people that we mentioned. So the purple people who are very knowledgeable technically, but also in the domain, the business field that they work in. So it is means the right mix of skill set. If you have, and if you can attract more people and who can bring value, and they will be real assets for you in this journey of insight driven.
Indeed. Which actually brings me to my last question, because we only talked about all the positives and all that stuff, right? So I'm sure that it's not going to be easy to become an insight-driven organization. I mean, Google did not happen overnight. So what do you think are some of the challenges that you've actually heard from your colleagues or read about or experienced, and especially even in your business? In the airline industry example, right? If you can think of insights-driven organizations, you're thinking about airlines. You mentioned KLM or Air France for that matter. So tell us about some of the challenges that organizations face when they have to become insight driven.
So one of the first challenge, I would say, is the company culture itself, means the organization culture. And this is very difficult to change. I mean, change, you mentioned change management. So change management itself is not easy to bring. So one way of approaching this change management or change culture is to have a participation form of creating this a participation form of creating this change management or culture. Where to start in this case, Professor? Where to start? So we can start by having brainstorming among the C-suite and bringing more often the smartest people who are the data analytics or the data analyst or the customer, or I'm sorry, the scientists, the data scientists people. They work in very much silos. So I think that we need to bring these people together with the business people, the purple people, the C-suite together in brainstorming session. And after that brainstorming, what is important is to create what we called some form of visioning that comes. You need to ask some compelling questions that you need to ask. So the fundamentals, as we say, of becoming insight driven. So the fundamentals for me would be to ask questions, and these would be very compelling. So the key objectives of achieving insight driven organization. Why do we want to become? How can analytics help achieve them? Then how can we use insights to innovate on the services product that we are providing? How can we improve on the customer service level that we are providing? So in the brainstorming session with the groups that you're going to create, you need to ask these type of questions. So one way would be to start asking the right question. Then other questions that we need to ask is, what operating model will best support our goals? What is the right mix of technical analytics, communication, and business acumen skills? That is a purple people that we are mentioning. So other challenge that we see, so one challenge is the the organization culture. So this you can resolve it in a journey by communication, learning, brainstorming session involving the whole organization, the champion coming to each function and explaining the why, the objectives, what we want to achieve, and especially to involve all people at different levels to get their buy-in, so that you're going to overcome resistance. So this is the first challenge. Then the other challenge is that many organizations have data, they are very rich in data, but they are very poor in terms of insight. So how can we now bring the value out of the data? So they work in silo, and people don't talk about among themselves, and they don't share data. So the right technology is going to bring the data together, that is a data warehouse or the data lakes that we are going to build to bring all the data together, that is the structured and the unstructured part. So by bringing that data, so you're going to also help people to break that silo mode of working, and through that vision that we mentioned in the strategy and vision and all the communication and organization culture change, you are trying to bring that concept of working together and infusing inside across the organization with the right data, the architecture, the technology that you're going to bring, and the data governance is going to help you to that. So this is the second challenge that we have, that is a silo mode of working, and people don't valuing enough the data that they have and on which they can tap to create the insight that we can. Then we have the process aspect. Means many companies don't question the process that they have, and they are very much in a status quo mode, and they don't challenge enough. They are not disrupting and questioning the status quo, and there are a lot of potential of re-engineering processes, automating some processes somehow. So they are bogged in that. So I think the purple people and the people that we mentioned, smart data scientists that we are going to bring from outside, they become the catalyst, and they are going to actually encourage the purple people within the organization to questions on the status quo. They are going to now bring a new way of thinking, and they are going to help this business process reengineering that we mentioned. And then we need to, on the technology part, I think many companies don't assess rightly the technology infrastructure and architecture they want. What happens is that they have been growing incrementally, but it is more like, I need a CRM, that's it. Yeah. I need a data management platform, I have it. I need a marketing automation platform, I have it. So they have a stack of products, but not necessarily these products are talking to each other. Yeah. So it is like the integration channel, a challenge that we have. So going towards cloud computing and new generation of customer data platforms, which have machine learning and artificial intelligence already infused, built in it. This type of approach and technology infrastructure is going to bring a reduction in cost in your investment. Then you are already investing in the right technology, which is going to take you to the next step forward and tapping on the insight itself, and less problem of focusing on the integration part and whatsoever. So I think this is another challenge that companies have, and how they can now overcome it is through the right investment in the right infrastructure based on cloud, and going for technology which have already inbuilt machine learning capabilities and artificial intelligence. Then you have the data itself. So the data itself, we talk about the data governance, which is going to set the quality, the literacy part, the compliance, And these type of things would be taken right if you have the right governance. So the governance is going to address the problem of, or the issues of compliance, quality, and the whole data management, and how we can bring the insight to different levels with the right access rights, the security inbuilt, and compliance.
Fantastic. So again, it's one of those things. What I thought was very interesting was that the very things that you said, the competencies that you need to be insight driven, also happen to be challenges that companies face. Because I was thinking about, you had strategy, then you had culture, remember you had the people component, having the right kind of people. So I think my take on this is that the very competencies that you need to build, if not done properly, the very building blocks of insight-driven organizations, if not done properly, can also come to be a challenge as well. I think that for me is one of the key things out here. And so essentially, in the interest of time, if I were to wrap it up, Youvraj, what do you think are some of the key things that people should know about insights-driven organizations? What would be a key takeaways?
So for me, the key takeaway is that a new kind of firm or new kind of organizations are stealing our customers. Yeah. Because they are insight driven, and they are going at a higher average than the normal one. So how are we going to tackle that? So we have to harness the insight across the organization, our own organization. Yeah. We have to set the right strategy. We have to harness the capability of our people. That is, we need to bring a data literacy culture or education or learning within the organization at all levels. Then we need to implement these so that we can tap into competitive advantage. And that technology is going to help us with the right process, with the right governance, and with the right data. If we can, we have to capture the right data, store them in the governance that it needs, with the compliance that it needs, respecting all the laws. Then adopting an insight-driven organization would help us to succeed, because the right orchestration of these 5 components, strategy, people, data, process, and technology, is going to help us achieve the competitive advantage that other companies have in terms of personalization, in terms of next best action, in terms of understanding the customer behavior, in terms of proposing the right product to the right customer at the right time, as a micro moment needs. So organization can get ahead and stay ahead of the curve by doing that.
Well, thank you so much for that, Youvraj. Thank you for sharing your insights again. And I hope that you return again with more insights. And you have promised us that you're going to come to the world of sales itself soon. So we look forward to that. And thank you again for taking your time.
It was my pleasure. And thank you for giving me that opportunity.